I'm good. I'm good. Good to see you. Good
Good.
to be here. I've been
Oh,
enjoying all of the speakers.
th- th- thank, thank you so much, Mr. Melecio, from Georgia Institute of Technology in USA.
Yes, in Atlanta,
Uh,
Georgia. Yep.
yes, okay. So you're most welcome for this event. You have 15 minutes, sir. Please, the mic with you.
All right. Thank you. So thank you everyone for logging into this session. And this is something that's I'm very excited about. I have the opportunity to work on a local and a global stage and working with entrepreneurs across many sectors. I primarily focus a lot on helping researchers translate technologies out of the university and build high tech, deep tech startups. So I'll tell you a little bit about the organization that I work for at Georgia Tech. It's called ATDC, stands for the Advanced Technology Development Center at Georgia Tech Institute University. And we focus on building deep tech, high tech startups to help stimulate the economy for the state of Georgia and building deep tech jobs. And so we intersect with a lot of faculty, a lot of students, a lot of local entrepreneurs in our ecosystem. We're one of the longest standing incubators attached to a university in the United States. We've been in existence for over 40 years. And in that, we have helped our startups get raised close to about $18 billion. And so far this year, in spite of COVID, our startups have raised about $89 million, which is exciting. And we've actually had a unicorn exit to American Express. So very excited about all the things and the activities that kind of go on in our ecosystem. So I just want to talk about some of the best practices in entrepreneur ecosystem, some of the things that I see and some of the things that I believe are very crucial and important, because when we think of an ecosystem, largely we use that word and that term in our own individual backyards, but I want to kind of hybrid in the context of not just locally, but just think of it in the context of globally. And some of the things that I may say may necessarily reflect some of the things that other people have said. So and given that ecosystems are very murky, very challenging, they're very hard to navigate. Even in our own ecosystem, there are tons of people that have technologies and interests that are a wide range of variety of different types of technologies, whether it's fintech, whether it's health tech, or digital, whatever it is that they may be. But one of the things that I have found is that when you think of an ecosystem, finding the right fit for you is important. Getting access to the right people, the right coaches, the right mentors, the right university systems. And sometimes that is a bit of an arduous task for people to be able to kind of navigate through some of these ecosystems. But I want to talk about somewhat on a global stage for a second here. Obviously we all know that COVID has been one of those things that has impacted of all. It's impacted the way we do business here in Georgia. It has impacted how we educate our students. It's impacted everything. And one of the things that I have long encouraged our students and our startups is that now that we have this thing called COVID that hit us, let's kind of look at it from a good opportunity where we can leverage the opportunity to now look at the global stage as our entire ecosystem. And how do we build technologies and how do we engage with other ecosystems to kind of drive and fuel some of the things that we do at a local level. I love the fact that someone mentioned the sustainable goals for development, because I think it is a great context for us to kind of think about. When you think of the theme of the World Economic Forum, the Great Reset, it truly is a great reset. It's a great reset for all of us to think about how do we now deconstruct and then rebuild what an ecosystem should look like, entrepreneurial ecosystems. When you look at the challenges that a lot of us face from an entrepreneurship standpoint, from a health standpoint, from a social unrest, for a gender equality, all of things that I believe that are important, but also when you look at the things that the technologies that we'll need, like who would ever thought that something like Zoom would be worth more from a valuation standpoint than Exxon Oil? But that's just the power of technology and how we were able to pivot. Now, had this been about 10 years ago and we were hit with this, I think it would have had a much more devastating impact. But the fact that we were able to consolidate all of our challenges, pivot into something different, and then leverage technologies to be able to reach assets and to be able to reach people from a global stage, from an economic standpoint, from an informational standpoint, and from a coaching standpoint. So there are a couple of things that I think that every ecosystem should have and should be strong. And one of those is access to domestic markets. And what do I mean? By having customers and companies be able to be part of the entrepreneurial ecosystem, and that be Fortune 500 companies, companies that are associated, that have similar interests, that are innovating right alongside startups, that are in a place that are helping startups to be able to build companies and to be able to grow. So having access to domestic markets is one of those important things as well. But more importantly, also, I think having access to a foreign market as well. A lot of startups sometimes tend to have a tendency to be so focused locally on their local ecosystem. But now that we have the opportunity to have a global stage from an ecosystem standpoint, meaning that I know we use that word in context for our local ecosystem, but I want to encourage and push entrepreneurs and any local ecosystem builders to think about the stage from a global perspective. And what does that look like? What does that look like from an asset standpoint and a resource standpoint? And how do you give your entrepreneurs and people located in your ecosystem access to local markets? But you cannot think about what that looks like without thinking about what does the human capital workforce look like. You know, things about like your management talent, your outsourcing availability, your immigrant workforce. All of these things are so important when you're talking about crafting and pulling together an enormous ecosystem that helps us to fuel and create and build jobs. You think about it, when you think about the outsourcing availability, where we may have a startup that is local here, but then you may have someone 4,000 miles away looking for employment, but yet they have a skill set that can uniquely help the local entrepreneur and local ecosystem. So that's what I mean about thinking from a global perspective and not just thinking from a local ecosystem perspective, because we have now the technology and the capabilities to access markets in a way that we have never been able to access them before. And so having these interconnected, even interwoven networks is going to be so important and so crucial as we move forward beyond COVID, and how we look at this world that we all live in this world that we all inhabit, and how do we build sustainable ecosystems that where we can share information, share data, share best practices, share content, and share all these things that are necessary for it to help us to build successful ecosystems. But there is also that big elephant in the room that helps drive all of this, and that's that funding. The funding and the finance aspect of it, being able to have access to capital, have access to creative capital. We know that sometimes banks have been traditionally the go-to when it comes to building up startups or venture capital or private equity, but sometimes don't necessarily always work for entrepreneurs in certain ecosystems. So we need to find very creative, unique ways to be able to fuel and fund some of these ecosystems. And that has to be broadly across the entire US and not just across the world, and not just in our own local ecosystems. But how do we interconnect the financing aspect so that we can find the best, the brightest, and that we can fund them so that we can fundamentally all contribute to shifting this global economy that works for all of us. And more importantly, which is also very near and dear to me, is having the support systems that are necessary to make all this possible. You know, our startups wouldn't be a success if they didn't have great mentors, great advisors, or incubators and accelerators that are important to drive, to give people the understanding or the support that they need. You know, my running joke is I like to tell my entrepreneurs and the entrepreneurs that I work with, I say, hey, listen, you're great at your tech, your technology, you know, but I've been there, done that, been in the industry. So let me be your blind spot. And so that's how I kind of look at mentoring and advising. You know, I'm the blind spot to some of the things that you may not be aware of to help you build out your startup and move it to a market, and being able to develop strong networking skills, not just within your local market, but in your global market. I've been a beneficiary of having access to people that are outside of my ecosystem that has helped me to be a better coach, a better mentor, a better lecturer, and even just a better entrepreneur as well. So having strong support systems is extremely important when you're talking about building a quality and strong entrepreneurial ecosystem. And also, one of the things that I don't hear a lot, and it depends on the conversations that you're involved in, you'll kind of hear this from time to time. And having a strong regulatory framework and infrastructure is so important. Being able to give access, if you're trying to attract the best, the brightest talent and entrepreneurs and companies into your ecosystem, it needs to be ecosystem friendly. We know oftentimes that technology and technology innovates and disrupts, and we realize that, you know, public policy regulates and controls, there has to be a strong, healthy balance between the two, where you got these startups that are creating new and novel and disruptive technologies, but there has to be the regulatory framework and the infrastructure for them to be able to grow. And some things as simple as tax incentives, or whether that's R&D tax credits that are associated to giving them an incentive to build within their local ecosystems, or even working with their local legislators to figure out what is it that I can do from a tax standpoint to help us to create and bring more jobs into your business. So you must consider a regulatory framework and an infrastructure when you're thinking about having a very supportive and strong ecosystem within your market. But also, not to beat the dead horse, so to speak, but here it's like education and training is also one of those things. Workforce with pre-university education, workforce with university education, and entrepreneurship specific training. We talk about job skilling, upskilling, and reskilling. You can't have an ecosystem of entrepreneurs and a startup ecosystem and it all not collectively work together, because we all uniquely have different needs, different wants, and different desires, and we all have different career goals. Some want to be entrepreneurs, some entrepreneurs, and some are working or trying to build a startup. But collectively, when we have a strong enough ecosystem that works all together, we can uniquely provide the quality education and training and support that helps the entrepreneur build a successful business, but more importantly, feel like they're assimilated into their local entrepreneurial ecosystem so that they could be a success. And major universities are usually the catalyst for that. You know, I work at a university and I see how our university here at Georgia Institute of Technology is so strong in making sure that we play such a strong role in entrepreneurship, and playing such a strong role in helping the companies figure out what is the ideal formation, and play a strong role in helping them form new companies. We have several verticals on our campus that are uniquely designed and equipped to help students to be a success in that endeavor. One of the organizations that I work in at the Advanced Technology Development Center is designed for that, where we have no interest in taking equity from our entrepreneurs, but we have a sole objective and a sole mission to support and to serve the entrepreneur, to make sure that we put them in the best environment for them to be a success. And I think that that is so crucial when we're talking about building a strong entrepreneurial ecosystem and having best practices. But more importantly, it must be inclusive. And oftentimes we operate in so many silos, because whether someone looks like us, doesn't look like us, sound like us, don't sound like us, have got the education we have, don't have the education we have, if we learn to suspend those biases and build an ecosystem, we can fundamentally impact and change and shift the way we build entrepreneurial ecosystems. And cultural support is always important. When you think
2
about
minutes left for you, sir. 2 minutes.
you. When you think
Okay.
about the cultural support and the cultural aspect, you must have tolerance of risk and failure. You know, there must be that support system. If you're a woman, if you're a man, if you're someone, a person of color, there needs to be that network of support to let you know that, hey, we're here, and then be able to celebrate the ecosystem, celebrate your wins, so that people feel warm and welcome to be able to feel like that they can create and innovate. And so with that said, I want to thank you for listening to just a brief overview of some of the things that I feel are important and best practices for building a strong entrepreneurial ecosystem. I can tell you this, I've worked with well over 700 startups across this globe, and I have thoroughly understand how ecosystems work and how ecosystems should be built. And one of the things, and when you put people first, there's always a success when it comes to developing strong ecosystems. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for such excellent presentation. When you conclude your speech about the training and education, which has come up with, as you know, from my point of view, as associate professor in Kuwait University School of Education. So